Tell me what you're doing and I'll do it. Okay, then get off of me and I'll sit down. You don't have to push me. I said I'll sit down. Don't push me.
Ma'am, you're under arrest. You're going to do it.
Yeah, and I said I'll get up there. You don't need to push me.
This is the anatomy of a complete public unraveling. It's the final, desperate struggle against the inevitable, the moment a simple airport dispute cascades into a full-blown felony arrest. But this chaotic culmination, this symphony of sirens and shouts under the sterile airport lights, did not begin here. It began hours earlier, with a single fateful decision during the mundane ritual of boarding a plane, an act so aggressive it would ignite a firestorm of violence and consequence. The air in the Orlando International Airport terminal was thick with the usual blend of anticipation and exhaustion. Families corralled restless children, and business travelers stared into laptops. Yet, at the boarding gate for a flight to St. Louis, this fragile peace was about to be shattered. A woman, later identified as the epicenter of the chaos, was allegedly lost and without her boarding pass. By the time she found her way to the jet bridge, her seat, 12A, was at the heart of a brewing conflict. Another family was settling in, their young son momentarily blocking the aisle as his mother secured a car seat. Patience was a currency in short supply. Instead of a polite request, the woman allegedly chose force, shoving the child aside with a harsh command to get out of her way. This single act of aggression was the spark in a powder keg. The child's mother, witnessing the shove, immediately confronted the woman. Her words were sharp, a mother's protective instinct flaring into righteous anger. She insisted that any future issues be addressed to her directly, not taken out on her child. What could have been a moment for de-escalation instead became a point of combustion. The woman's response was not an apology, but a torrent of defiance. The argument escalated with shocking speed, voices rising from a heated exchange to a full-throated screaming match in the narrow confines of the aircraft aisle. The tension snapped. According to witnesses, the conflict turned physical. A man, presumably the husband of the other party, later recounted the brutal details to law enforcement.
So,
Yeah. She came back to my seat.
this is on the plane?
On my seat, she came. She
I'm
walked
right
back
here.
to
I
my
can hear
seat
you.
and punched me in the nose and took my tooth out.
He claimed the woman had returned to his wife's seat and delivered a stunningly violent punch to her face, a blow so forceful it knocked a tooth out. The dream of a family vacation dissolved into a nightmare of blood and shock. The cabin crew, faced with an out-of-control brawl, had no choice. Both parties were immediately deplaned, ejected from the flight, and thrown back into the sterile environment of the terminal, where the situation would only spiral further under the scrutiny of airport authorities and the police. Back in the terminal, the scene was a chaotic tableau of conflicting stories and raw emotion. The police arrived to find a woman vibrating with a mixture of indignation and panic. She launched into a frantic, rambling defense, her hands gesturing wildly as she tried to paint herself as the victim. She claimed she had been lost, that she couldn't get past the child who was standing in the aisle, that she had merely asked him to move. In her version of events, the other woman had become aggressive, getting in her face, forcing her to defend her personal space.
She came back and she got, don't ever talk to my child again. And I said, this is my...
Her narrative was a shield, a desperate attempt to deflect blame and rewrite the preceding moments. She was not the aggressor, she was the one who was accosted. She was simply trying to get to her assigned seat. But every story has another side. The officers then turned to the other family. The mother, holding her baby, presented a starkly different account. Her voice was steady, her narrative clear and damning. She described how the woman had pushed her son out of the way without warning. She recounted her attempt to set a boundary, only to be met with escalating hostility. She described the woman getting closer and closer, invading her space until their faces were inches apart. It was then, she admitted, that she reacted, grabbing the woman by the hair. The conflict devolved into a tangled, vicious tussle in the seats, a flurry of pulling hair and biting, a primitive explosion of rage that had no place on a commercial airliner.
Get her out my seat, get her out my seat. And she's getting closer and closer, and then she just mushes in my face. When she mushes in my face, that's when I reacted and grabbed her by her hair. And then that's when she went to go bite me.
The officers now stood between two irreconcilable realities. On one side, a woman claiming self-defense against an unprovoked verbal assault. On the other, a family nursing a bleeding mouth and a traumatized child, accusing that same woman of initiating the entire incident with an act of physical aggression. Witness statements corroborated the family's version, painting a picture of a woman who had been the primary instigator. The police made their decision. The husband was informed that his wife was being designated as the primary aggressor. The other party wished to press charges. The official process of an arrest was about to begin, and with it, the woman's final catastrophic descent. The moment an officer uttered the words, "You're under arrest," something inside the woman snapped. Her frantic energy transformed into pure, unadulterated defiance. As the cold steel of the handcuffs closed around her wrists, her protests erupted into a full-blown physical struggle. She insisted she was not resisting, even as her body strained against the officer's grip.
I'm not resisting. That's a lie. I am not resisting. They are pulling on me. I'm not resisting.
Her denial became a mantra, a desperate chant against the reality closing in on her. The officers, now dealing with an actively resistant subject, were forced to escalate their methods. She was placed in a wheelchair, not for injury, but for control, as they navigated her through the stunned onlookers in the terminal. Her voice echoed through the concourse, a litany of accusations and demands. She claimed they were pushing her, hurting her, that she could walk on her own. Every command from the officers was met with a new argument, a fresh wave of resistance. Her struggle was a physical manifestation of her refusal to accept the consequences of her actions. As they moved her through the airport, she became a spectacle of defiance, her body a battlefield between her will and the officer's duty. The journey from the terminal to the police vehicle outside was a gauntlet of escalating force. Her verbal assaults on the officers were relentless and personal. She was no longer trying to explain herself, she was trying to wound them with words, to assert some final vestige of power. When they reached the police car, her resistance reached its peak. She refused to get in, planting her feet, using her body as a final barricade. The officers had no choice but to use their combined strength to overcome her. They pressed her against the hot metal of the car's hood, her face contorted in a mask of pain and fury as they worked to secure her.
Is this on video, please?
Sure is.
Thank you. Because you guys don't know what you're doing, clearly. Obviously, don't know what you're doing. Don't know what you're doing.
Even after being forced into the back of the cruiser, her fight was not over. Confined in the small space, she continued to thrash, complaining that the handcuffs were too tight, that her wrist was injured, that the officers were monsters. Her voice, now muffled by the closed doors, was a final, haunting echo of the chaos she had single-handedly unleashed.
Wrist! No, my wrist! I can't feel it. My wrist, I can't feel. Don't pinch me in the stomach. Why are you pinching me in the stomach? Don't touch my stomach, you fuck.
The airport, a place of transit and new beginnings, had become the stage for her dramatic end. The charges were severe: battery, resisting an officer, assault on a law enforcement officer. A simple flight had turned into a life-altering event, a permanent record of a day when a momentary lapse in judgment spiraled into a complete and total loss of control.